This time on Engine Masters, how much power are you giving up to look this cool with your header? You know, at Engine Masters, we take horsepower very seriously. And in many episodes, you'll find us finding that nuance that just gets that very last edge of performance. And other times, we test a bunch of goofy headers just because we can. And that's what this episode is gonna be all about. See, sometimes you choose an exhaust header for cosmetic purposes instead of really for performance. And on this episode, we're gonna find out what you're actually paying in horsepower in order to have that kind of looks. We got tri-wise, we got Lakes pipes, we got ZOOMIES, we got gasser headers, we got T-bucket headers. But of course, the engine that we're using as a baseline is our traditional 383 small block Chevy, because let's be honest, this is the engine configuration that's probably in most of the cars that are gonna pick headers like this. It's our regular old 383. You've seen us run it dozens of times. It makes about 450 horsepower. So the headers that we're gonna test will begin with the T-bucket header. Now, I call it the T-bucket header so that you can sort of visualize it as a goofy cosmetic header. But in truth, this is what we call our dyno header. We have tested it. This setup makes more power than a typical under chassis header of the same size, which is why we always use it on the dyno. It's got that really long straight segment right out of the ports that tends to make horsepower. So that's gonna be our baseline. These are a 1 3/4 inch tube, and they've got a welded on collector extension. And you'll see us using collector extensions on all the different headers. So that is gonna be the bogey to beat. Next up, we are going to try the Tri-Y. I wouldn't put this in the category of a cosmetic goofy header, but it is a design that has been around for a long, long time that many people want to understand and know about, because there are so many claims that this design makes a ton of low-end torque. Now, to be fair, they're typically used in applications like tow trucks and things with much smaller, lower-powered engines than what we're dealing with here, but I still wanted to find out. These are automatically gonna have a disadvantage because they have a 1 5/8 inch primary tube. However, you will note why this is called a Tri-Y. This has a pair of cylinders that are coupled into one Y right here. Then this pair of cylinders is coupled into that Y right there. Then it goes into a 2-inch tube, and all four are coupled right here into the third Y, hence Tri-Y. I have no idea what this is gonna do. This is a Doug's header for an application of a GMG body. Let's call it a Monte Carlo or something like that. It also has the smallest collector of anything in our test. It's 2.5 inches, but we're gonna run it with a little extension. So that's the Tri-Y. Now we get into the real decorative stuff. This is a Sanderson header that is called a Lakes type header typically. Sometimes it's called a Limefire header. The design is based on the drive shaft from a 35 or 36 Ford, which is tapered like this. So back in the 50s, hot rodders would build their headers out of an old drive shaft. Pretty interesting. The main tubes are all 1 5/8 and they feed directly into that cone-shaped deal. In case you're wondering, we do have the bypass capped off right here because we didn't want the flow to be interrupted at the end and possibly hamper performance. So that's the Lakes header. Next up, the ZOOMIE. So ZOOMIE headers are really short headers that have no collector whatsoever. You'll often see these on dragsters that have more of an up sweep design or sometimes a low and down sweep design. These ones right here are from Schonenfeld headers. They are dirt cheap and they are 1 3/4 inch tubes. It's gonna be really interesting to find out what kind of power it makes with no collector whatsoever. And finally, the header of my personal choice, the fender well header. This is a unit for a Tri-5 Chevy. It would be in what most people call a gasser style. So you can see, you remove your inner fender well, bolt that to the engine, it goes up and out right behind the tire. I suspect this is pretty solid because it's got those really long straight tubes on it. And we're gonna end up testing this with and without a collector. And again, that's a 1 3/4 inch tube. So, there you go, the roundup of cosmetic headers, and we're gonna kick it all off with our 3D3 wearing the sprint car tubes. This one's just for fun, bunch of goofy headers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna learn much other than what happens when you install weird headers on your rat rod. So step one are the headers that we would normally call dyno headers, but in truth, those are like sprint car or maybe T-bucket headers.
Yeah, that's actually the way they're described.
Well, I'm convinced this is going to be our best header, so it's probably the appropriate baseline.
I hope it's not.
Really?
Yeah, but I think it probably will be.
You're in for a
I know
surprise?
what you're rooting for.
Yes.
I already know. Fender well, Dave.
Exactly. Okay, Steve, give us a baseline.
Okay, here we go.
So this is gonna be our baseline with our dyno headers, which are also like T-bucket headers. Okay, let's have a look. Here's our baseline power, not a big surprise considering that the last time we ran this, it had a single plane intake manifold and it was making 470. The dual plane hacked it down a little bit. It's making 451.4 horsepower, 5,900 RPM, and the torque is 470.9 at 4,200 RPM. It is what it is. The question is, the only question is, which header do you want to run first? Do you want to go from presumed worst to presumed best?
I want to get the tri-wise out of the way.
Because those are the presumed worst.
They just irritate me.
Okay, tri-Y headers coming up.
That was a good answer. Oh, that was noisy. Oh, okay. Take her away, Troy.
Look what I found. Here's a shocker. I found some 2.5-inch tube collector extensions here at Westech. There'd be no reason to actually run this in real life. But I'm gonna throw them on here just to give these headers some chance of making a ton of low-end torque. Because as we found out in a prior test, collector extensions make a huge difference in low end.
Okay, let's go. This is gonna be great.
Are you still irritated by them?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, well, let's have a look.
You're gonna be more irritated when you see the numbers.
I think so
Steve-O.
too. Uh-huh.
Not that bad.
467.5 pound-feet of torque, 445.3 horsepower, so the peaks are surprising me a little bit. But let's look at the curve compared with the T-bucket header. Best possible header versus tri-Y. Here it goes. Ooh. So the black lines are the tri-Ys, down as you would expect, and the red is the dyno header. Kind of, yeah, you saw a little bit of a dip right there, which is interesting because the tri-Y is supposed to be famous for making power right there, and it does not. I'm surprised that it matches throughout here, and I'm surprised that the peaks, how much are they down? 5 numbers? 5 or 6 numbers.
T-bucket headers are definitely better.
But by nowhere near the margin I expected.
No, they aren't as bad as I thought.
I can't be as irritated by the tri-Y as I wanted to be.
I know, and I'm disappointed that I can't be either.
Right. How about you? What's your irritation level?
Oh, 0. I kind of like
Really?
it, actually. Oh, look at that. It's right there with the dyno header.
So you don't care whatsoever, you've got a little bit of a rash. Okay.
Admittedly, that's pretty decent if you can hang with the dyno header that close.
Not bad. So what do you want to do next?
We should do yours next.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
No, we're gonna end with those. No.
Well, you're outvoted, really.
Right. Yeah, you know, you're right.
You
But,
know, I
you,
mean-
you and I both know that this is not a democracy. So I might as well just go put the ZOOMIES
Okay,
on.
let's go bolt on.
No,
the
I was
ZOOMIES.
thinking Lakes pipes.
Oh,
we
I
forgot about
the
those.
lakes
Yeah.
pipes.
See?
Those are awesome.
Right. It all comes back to the front.
Those are awesome.
All right, let's go get the Lakes pipes and throw them on here. Make the tri-Ys look great. Okay, it was terrible, but do you care?
No, it's just so cool looking. I don't care.
It doesn't matter. It's a decorative item. It made 445.6 pound-feet of torque, 425.8 horsepower, way down. Let's see how bad it really is if we compare it to the dyno headers, which are like the greatest. Oof. That is terrible. Clearly, the black line is the Lakes header, red line is the dyno header. This is kind of interesting.
But it's good for drivability.
Yeah, it made more torque below 3,500 RPM. That's kind of a surprise. But did you hear at the top?
Oh, it labored hard trying to rev up to the red line.
Yeah, it's like it really didn't want to run. It was like, ugh. And I think that's because of the way the three pipes enter. They're not dead 90s, but remember we learned on the single exhaust how bad it hurts
90.
flow when you just 90 the pipe like that?
Yeah, that's almost 90, particularly the ones right in the center there.
Yeah, that's just gonna kill it.
I think they're just cool, that's all.
But the Zoomies are cooler?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to the Zoomies next.
Steve-O, are you ready for the raciest looking headers we've got?
Those are my favorites.
The Zoomies. These are gonna sound terrible, they'll kill power, but they'll look the coolest.
We need a header gasket.
Right, we're firing up the Zoomies to burn the paint off of them and hopefully shoot fire. First of all, the important stuff, I think the Zoomies win for fire.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The Lakes pipes were pretty good, but nothing like this.
Yeah, and some style points too, you have to admit, right?
Yeah. No, that definitely got like rat rod style points.
I was thinking a lot like a funny car driver. Handbrake,
With
throttle,
450
flames.
horsepower.
Well, you know, a new funny car driver.
Okay, let's see what kind of power they made. There we go, 457.8 pound-feet and 440.7 horsepower, and I'm surprised how nice the curve
Pretty
looks.
curved.
Really
Yeah,
nice.
that's kind of a shocker.
It was pretty good way down at the bottom at 3,000. It was still
Surprising.
pretty good. Yeah, for being so short.
Here we go, compare it to the dyno header. There we go, black lines are the Zoomies, red lines are the excellent dyno header, and I'm surprised at this right here that something with no collector at all made more low-end torque.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked.
That's confusing.
Yeah, that goes to show you never can predict the results sometimes.
Never say always is what that means, yeah. I would have said they'll kill low end and make the same peak but be down throughout the curve. That's what I would have guessed before we started, but obviously it killed power everywhere except for below 3,500 RPM.
Who knows?
Who knows?
The bizarro world of
This bizarro world.
It still
crazy
wins
header
for cool, though.
No, the coolest is what we're gonna do next, which is the fender well for the gassers.
Oh, no.
Which are gonna make the most power.
And look cool doing it.
Or humiliate me.
Well, we'll find out
That's
in a
likely.
couple of minutes here.
All right, you wanna cool this down and I'll go grab the Doug's gasser header. So far, I have to say, every one of these headers has had pretty good bolt fitment. You know, typically there's one that just doesn't want to go in, but these have all been easy. Have you guys run into a bad one?
No, you picked headers that are really pretty easy to install all the
I
way
scienced that just for you. Ready? Ooh, I like these.
David always has the most fun on an episode when he gets to pick the winning part first.
How do you know it wins?
Well, because you picked it.
Once again, you can never say always.
Yeah, that's a dangerous
It's a
statement.
lesson I often forget.
Yeah, it's a dangerous statement in engine technology.
The numbers, please, Mr. Brule.
Yeah.
Yeah, looked good, especially coming on the roll in. It looked really good.
We'll do it.
I like watching you do this.
Yeah, 457 pound-feet of torque, 452.6 horsepower. The Zoomies had a nicer looking curve.
Yeah.
They had none of this.
Yeah.
I didn't even see this.
Yeah.
I saw this number when I rolled in. That kind of drove past. Then I saw this one. I obviously saw that, but
How about overlay it on the dyno headers? It's always the answer. Dyno headers in red and my fender well units in black. Boy, did they throw away a lot of power, but they made the same from about 4,700 up.
And we're a little bit right at the bottom. They were better, but torque-wise,
Just destroyed.
destroyed.
you know,
I know how to fix this. Maybe.
Maybe.
maybe. I know where you're going with it with the extensions, but what I'm more interested than anything is when the extensions are on it, is it going to actually lower this and pick this up? Is it in this area right there, is it going to do something?
I think
Stop
so.
pretending to know. He's pretending to know.
Bad move.
Bad move.
We should go put extensions on and see what
think it's a good
happens with
idea.
that.
I think, yeah, what we're gonna do next is put header collector extensions on there, which is gonna do something down here. We just don't know, what.
Yeah.
Collector extension makes this thing a beast.
Quite a difference.
Look at that. 471.8 pound-feet to torque, 450.4 horsepower, and let's have a look at it without the collector extensions with the same header. Wow. That is just nothing more than bolting on an 18-inch tube on the end of the header. The red line is without the collector extensions, black is with, and look, once again, it's doing something weird down here.
It did exactly what I had hoped it would do, was lose some.
Yeah.
And it's that whole.
It is, it's crazy. I mean, we found this out when we did the whole episode about collector extensions.
Yeah.
But man, that is a lot of meat right there. That makes the car go faster or do better burnouts anyway.
It makes it do a lot of stuff better.
Wow, that's great.
And picked up the peak torque number, a big number too.
Yeah.
This is huge. That's going to be the thing that everyone looks at. This is the most interesting to me. A collector extension that lost power below 3,200.
I think we need to go cut it shorter. Why?
We've done that episode.
It made sense though, it worked.
But where do you end up with it?
I know.
You know, then it ends up someplace in between. But this is what I was kind of.
Well, no, I'm more thinking that it adds it up here back. But you don't know.
You know, we're talking 2 horsepower. That could be.
Yeah.
Just hit flip-flop those completely. I mean, just swap.
Which made the curve kind of more similar to our dyno headers.
Yeah. In fact, I bet when we look at that.
We need to look at that. Okay, so pull off the one without the collector extensions. And right now we're gonna compare the fender well header with collector extensions to our dyno headers, or what we've been calling T-bucket or sprint car headers. There you go. The fender well headers make more torque than Steve's favorite dyno headers.
Actually,
look at that.
Got a better average over the curve.
Yes,
I mean,
it
it's
does.
almost identical.
Actually, I think I have new dyno headers.
These are them.
I think so.
I know, except for that they're horrible to work around.
Oh, they are.
Because they burn you right in the giblets, but aside from that.
You can't get to anything, but they really are good on power.
Man, look at that.
Wow.
That is awesome. Black lines are my fender well headers, and the red is like our world's greatest dyno header that we use every single time. And they absolutely match above 4,000 RPM, and from 3,000 to 4,000, the fender wells make more power, and then there's still a weird little wobble right here where if we pulled it even lower.
It's so
that's the entry
insignificant
number
there.
on the dyno
Yeah.
also, so you don't even know.
I really didn't think what I saw was going to be this much better than the dyno header, because this number looked pretty similar, The peak number looked pretty similar over there, and it was almost identical up here. So I thought it was going to be kind of an overlay, but boy, there's a chunk of meat there.
What I want to know now is on these fender well headers, the collector extension always needs to turn and go back down below the tire. I wonder how much just that turn makes a difference. What I do know, though, is it's worth having it on there even with the turn.
So it doesn't blow all the...
Yeah. Well, so it doesn't blow everything up. You couldn't put it on the car like this. The collector extension would almost be dragging the ground.
Okay,
Yeah,
Right.
so you gotta get it level with the rocker panel.
I don't think having that turn is going to make any difference.
Or if it does, it's not as bad as no collector extension at all.
Certainly. So
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I don't see it making a lot of difference if it's a nice transition and that same length, so. No, that's impressive. That's a good header.
Yeah, it sure is.
Can we overlay every header that we've tested here just for grins? Now we've got a graph here that's sort of confusing to look at. It's got every header that we have tested here. Let me go through the colors for you. Black is going to be our best ones, the fender well headers with the extensions on it. Then we've got red is the ZOOMIES, blue is the Tri-Y, green is the lake type header, and magenta is our standard baseline dyno header. Guys, thoughts?
The only thing I see is, with the exception of the Tri-Y, every other header that makes more down low makes less up top. And conversely, the ones that make the most up top make the least down low.
Look at what else we saw here, which is that the Tri-Y, advertised forever as making tons of low-end torque, did not.
Not the worst.
It's the worst. And the ZOOMIE with the shortest tubes and no collector, which is not supposed to make any low-end torque, did.
You know, I think it's fair to say, too, if we put a camshaft in here with another 20 degrees duration and a wider exhaust spread, different lobe separation angle,
it all changes.
We could we're going to see different results. So, so specific.
Yeah, I mean, my takeaway is there's power on the table, obviously, from the spread of the various curves, but these are just funky headers that you pick for a particular purpose. So, you know, it just depends on what you want for your own car or whatever you're trying to do. I mean, you're not going to interchange them as equivalent kinds of parts, right?
No, I was just curious. They're all novelty headers.
Right.
None of these are ones that you're going, ooh, I'm going to race. How can I fine tune this with my lake pipe? You know, nobody's doing that. These are all just for decoration, with the exception of the victorious and dominant fender well header.
Oh yeah, if you had a Tri-5.
He's completely discounting the sprint headers, just like they don't exist.
They're junk. Do you see how much power they threw away?
Yeah, that torque, Steve-O. I mean,
yeah.
How can you excuse that?
Okay, you win.
But on a bigger engine with more power, they might make that torque, but they're not going to make the top end. So I guess what we're saying is the results will vary. But in general, you can get the idea here. I think the Lakes pipes are, if you took the Lakes pipes versus a chassis header in virtually any application, they're going to kill power.
Yeah, right.
You know, and I think the same is true with the ZOOMIES.
You know what's fair, though? Is sometimes it's not about power. Sometimes it's just about being cool. And the Lake pipes and the ZOOMIES are cool.
So it comes back to, you look marvelous, as we do every time on Engine Masters.
You look marvelous.
As I look into my eyes.
As I look into my eyes,
I look marvelous.
That's fine.
Okay.
That was good. That was a good come off the looking good. That was kind of fun. Well, you know, that was a perfect out. That was just perfect.
That was a good one. Marvelous.